the Pledge of Allegiance, like we did tonight. What a tremendous honor that is. And I thank you for that. Okay, what's going on in Congress right now? We look at the polls and we see, gee whiz, most folks are not too happy about Congress. Well, I can immediately say, what is Congress made up of? The House of Representatives, 435, and the United States Senate, 100 over here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you all the House is doing its job. Because of people like you all and the election of 89 freshmen, we have been hard at work in our committees, passing legislation, working hard to try to get back to constitutional basics and to get our fiscal house in order. If we continue to spend the way that this administration and the last Congress wanted us to spend, it's going to destroy this country. Our number one enemy is debt. We cannot continue to borrow and spend. Now, some people would say tax, borrow, and spend. We need to revamp the tax structure, no question about that. But it's the borrowing. 43 cents of every dollar we spend. If it's on a program that we agree with, a program we disagree with, a program we don't care about, is borrowed money. And when you borrow money and you deficit spend and you continually have to add on to that national debt, incidentally, a bill that I voted against. My vote was strong. I listened to my constituents. Many of you all wrote me, you called me, listened to it, thought about it, prayed about it. My final vote was no. I did not like the committee with 12 then. I don't like it now.
Amen. Yeah.
But the House is doing its job. We passed a budget. We sent it to the United States Senate. Majority Leader Reid refuses to pass a budget. I'm here to tell you all, the Senate as a body is not doing its job. We continually send legislation to the Senate. They either table it, sit on it, and they're not getting it done. And the American people are going to cure that next time, because every House member, myself included, under the Constitution, is up for re-election every 2 years. Every senator is up every 6 years. So that means 1/3 of the United States Senate is up each time. Well, the next time that 1/3 is up, just remember that we have to go out and talk to people all across this country. Senators who are not doing their job and not passing their bills and not passing the budget need to be replaced. The White House, oh my gosh. One of the reasons I ran. Now, I have tremendous respect because of the Constitution for the office of the presidency. The president is the commander-in-chief. But as I read this document, I don't see where the president has a right to have czars.
Amen. Woo! Right.
I think when we think of the term czar, anybody know where that came from? That's right. It came from Russia. They were dictators, basically, autocrats. They weren't involved in a democracy. My gosh. Well, what I did in one of my votes in the earlier CRs that we voted on, I voted to defund some of those R's.
Amen.
Defund them all and just get them out. They don't belong there. Leave the power where it was intended, in the legislative branch. As we move forward, talk about the executive branch. What went on in Libya? We were not consulted in Congress. The president just did what he wanted to do. I mean, I have got to say this. We need to make sure that whoever is in the White House, who's ever in the Congress, whoever sits in the United States Supreme Court, plays by the rules. And the rules are clearly laid out right here. And we've got to get back to those basics. Why? Because if somebody gets out of whack, the process with balanced government between the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch will balance it out and will keep the people free. If one branch gets too powerful and goes beyond its bounds in the Constitution, the danger is to our liberty, and we cannot allow that to happen. The Supreme Court. 9 people. 9 people. I didn't see where it said 9 in here. I also did not see what the authority of the Supreme Court was in here. I want to talk with you all about that. It talks about Article 3. It says there shall be a Supreme Court. The judicial power will be vested in the Supreme Court. And it gives the power to create inferior courts to the Congress,
Yep.
which we've
That's
done
right.
in district courts and appellate courts around this country. But the United States Supreme Court, and remember this, when we elect the president, presidents of the United States appoint justices to the Supreme Court who are confirmed by the Senate. It matters who you elect in the White House because they appoint Supreme Court justices who interpret this document. Very, very important. Also, very important, there was a health care law that was passed in the last Congress. By their admission, it was not read before it was passed. That's shocking. By their admission, it is falling apart piece by piece. Just part of it last week was just basically fell apart. My view is that this is unconstitutional. But, that's not my vote. My vote was to repeal it in the House.
Right.
I did that, the House voted to repeal it, the Senate upheld it. But the health care bill will go to the United States Supreme Court, and it will be decided by the 9 justices. I don't know how that's going to come out, but some courts have said it was constitutional. Other courts said the entire bill was unconstitutional. Yet other courts have said that portions of the bill are unconstitutional. I maintain the whole thing has to go. It's a disgrace and it's a disaster.
Amen.
Woo! Another bill that was passed in that last Congress was something called Dodd-Frank. Yeah. Another disaster. Another attempt by the government to overregulate an industry that has already been regulated, and it's a problem. Ultimately, it's going to hurt the consumer in terms of increased costs. It needs to go. And you said, well, Chuck, what are you doing about it? Well, the President of the United States came to see us in the joint session of Congress. When the President comes and when the President calls for me to come down here and visit, I go out of respect for the office. I think that's very, very important. As Americans and as supporters of our great Constitution, we need to support the presidency as an office, the Congress